Hello and welcome to Sport for Business. I'm really pleased this morning we're joined by David Gough, referee, education and games development officer, openly gay man, a man of many parts. Let's kick off, given that we're just coming off the back of Dublin Pride weekend. You came out to your teammates when you were 28 years old, and you've told the story of how you went through that in your mind and how your teammates reacted. Um, have things changed since then, in the few years since then? But is it easier now than it would have been 5 years ago or 10 years ago to actually come out within the sporting environment?
Well, it's definitely become much easier. Ireland as a nation has changed post-marriage equality referendum back in 2015. And I suppose that was one of the greatest catalysts for me with my public coming out in 2015. I had my very private coming out in 2011, but the very public coming out in 2015. And it has helped a huge amount. And I'm not now the only gay man in the association or in my club. After my coming out, others came out afterwards on the team, and it's made for a much safer, a much more inclusive, and a much more tolerant GAA community. And the GAA is coming to terms with that, and I think we'll hear more positive stories around GAA players coming to terms with their sexuality and feeling comfortable coming out in the future.
As part of wider society, which it is in. You spoke over the weekend and running into it about the GAA's attempts to actually sort of to move with society, to move with the times, and perhaps to move with the membership as well. But there is a committee, there is consultation going on. The association marched under its own banner for the first time last year in Pride. Is it moving quickly enough within the association?
No, it's not. And like most things within the GAA, they are very slow to move. The GAA is a very traditional organization. It has certain structures and committees that things need to pass, and it does take time. What I would say is it kind of jumped so far forward from Pride in the creation of the role of the Diversity and Inclusion Officer and then the Gender Diversity Work Group, which seemed to bypass a lot of other steps that needed to have been taken in the meantime. And we just need to go back and revisit those. Some small things like changing the protocol around flying a flag, a rainbow flag in Croke Park, and the creation of a diversity and inclusion work group that would not just only incorporate sexuality, but that might look at sectarianism, special needs, racism, or members of the travelling community, which are all topical things at the moment as well. So it's a very broad role within the GAA, but things will move slowly, but they are moving in the right direction.
Well, it's always part of the solution is actually knowing what the problem is and recognizing it. So I think that in that sense, it sounds as though things are moving in the right direction. Your role within education is obviously important as well. Your education, you lecture, and you're in games development out in St. Patrick's College out there as part of DCU in Drumcondra. This past number of months, education has been very much to the fore in terms of its impact on schools, which is ongoing, and its impact on children going into those schools as well. How have you seen in your working daily life the impact and the toll it's been taking on the students, first year students in St. Pat's that had their own classroom experience cut short? Will they be able to make that up?
I'm unsure if they'll be able to make it up because I don't know what guidelines are going to be issued in relation to teaching practice and the allowance of trainee teachers to be allowed to go into schools. And I don't even know what the scenario is going to be like in schools in September, whether children are going to be put in pods of 10 or 15, whether they're going to have access to the teacher for half a day or 2 days a week. There's a lot of uncertainty around what the education landscape is going to like when we go back to school in September. And I suppose from a lecturing point of view, lecturing now has moved to an online platform, which was something I haven't been prepared for. And that's going to be difficult for me going back into lecture in my GA leadership course on St. Patrick's campus. But it's a challenge. It's something that I look forward to. I'm going to learn a new skill. And I suppose I have to take the positives out of it and I will need help. I will have to go to the GA and speak to them about e-learning platforms. But it's something that is going to add to my bow, and I'm quite happy to engage with it. But the educational platform certainly is going to change. And I felt sorry for those trainee teachers, particularly first years in their first year in college, to have their year cut so short, but also the fourth years who didn't get to complete their teaching practice or their educational cycle. And that was also difficult for them. So it's a mixed bag of sorts at the moment in DCU, and we just don't know where we're going to be in the ever-changing world of COVID and the guidelines that are being issued on a weekly basis.
Absolutely. If we could forecast exactly where we're going to be in 6 months' time, we'd be much wiser than we actually are. You're involved in the Cumman and mBunscoil as well, and there's obviously going to be significant changes within the whole national school environment. You'd hope, though, that the importance of the games and Cumman and mBunscoil in particular, and Allianz, great supporters of it all the way through, that will hold on. I was slightly concerned when all the talk was of the Leaving Cert and how schools were reconfiguring, that there was a significant number of teachers were coming out and saying, well, yeah, we've got the hall, we've got the gym, we can repurpose that, we can put desks in there. And I was just afraid that perhaps the whole area of physical education and sport was going to take a back seat again. Is that a fear that you might share?
It definitely is a fear, and I suppose we had to take what we would consider drastic steps in line with GA guidelines back in April in cancelling our Cumman and mBunscoil hurling season and our 10 days of sport athletics in Santry Stadium. And it now looks likely that we will have to postpone our football leagues, but we won't make that decision until much closer till September. We have some time to play with over the summer in the hope that those guidelines and certain restrictions might be lifted. But there is a huge concern around the physical education aspect of children, in that the children usually use halls in schools in confined spaces, obviously breathing heavily, sweating. There's a greater risk of COVID being transmitted between the children during those lessons. And we just don't know what way that's going to work when we go back to school. And certainly from a Cumman and mBunscoil perspective, we would like to think that our football leagues are going to be postponed. The opportunity, as you well know, for your children to play in Croke Park at the end is a fantastic opportunity for those children in 5th and 6th class that creates, I suppose, lifelong memories for the children of Dublin. I'm chairman of Cumman and mBunscoil in Dublin. I've been involved with Cumman and mBunscoil since my educational days in St. Pat's since 2007. I've been chairman for the past 4 years. And it's something that's very close to my heart, and I love engaging with the children through sport. But it is a worrying time, and we just haven't made that ultimate decision just yet.
Okay, well, there is an awful lot to be decided across the wider GAA community as well. You're involved as a referee. Obviously, the penultimate game of championship football that we saw was the Dublin and Kerry game last year. When you reflect back on that now, heavens, we're 9 months past that date. What are the memories that stick out in your mind from that day in Croke Park when it almost ended in glorious success for Dublin, just postponed?
Yeah, it's an absolutely fantastic thing to look back on and reflect. And I suppose each time I look back on it, I remember something different, or something different stands out. The whole day just seemed to pass very, very quickly, from when we attended breakfast in the Castleknock Country Club at 10 o'clock on Sunday morning, right up to the post-match reception with John Horan and Tom Ryan after the game. It just passed so quickly. But it's wonderful to look back on the game now and be completely happy with my performance and my decisions and how we performed as a set of match officials on the day. I was so fortunate to have probably the 3 best referees in the country with me on the day as linesman and fourth official, and also my own set of umpires, which I rely heavily on. And when I look back over the 78 odd minutes, I felt it was the most complete performance I have ever given as a referee. And it's lovely to think that that happened on such a historic day when Dublin were going for their drive for 5 and that Kerry tried to stop them. It was just a wonderful occasion, and something that I think I will look back for many years to come and think that that was the best performance that I've ever given on a football field.
Okay. Did you ever get a chance afterwards to speak to Johnny Cooper about that moment just before halftime? I know I was watching from Hill 16, and there was a sense of inevitability about it. I knew that he had done wrong, and he was already in the book. But I know he works in DCU as well, not closely to you. But have you seen him since?
No, we haven't crossed paths, unfortunately, since. I mean, we have a good relationship. In 3 years that I've been working in DCU, Johnny works on the Glasnevin campus, I work on Drumcondra campus. I think we've seen each other twice. We'd say hello, we'd pass pleasantries, but it never gets any more familiar than that. But we do have a good working relationship. I know that he understands the reasoning behind the decisions I had to make, and that there was no allegiance to him because he worked in the same university as me. And I don't think there'll be any fallout from it. It was a decision that had to be made. And I did briefly see him at Jim Gavin's, where Jim was given an honorary doctorate in DCU, but that was across a crowded room at that time. And it wasn't the appropriate place to have your first meeting with someone that you'd sent off in an All-Ireland final. But I will see him again soon. And I know the type of person he is. He's a genuine, hardworking individual, and he understood the decision that needed to be made on the day.
And the beauty of sport is that what's absolutely front and center stage on a Monday is forgotten, and the next game happens on the Tuesday and the Wednesday, and we move on. In terms of moving on, we look now, as we stand at the moment, as though we've got our club championships, and then we've got our county championships rolling in. Last night was the first time that we had kids and children and teams back on pitches and training. How important do you think is it for the good of the nation, the sort of the well-being of the nation, that we do get sport back to as great an extent as possible in as safe a manner as possible?
Well, Ireland is one of those nations that's just sports mad. And I think it was great for the psyche of the nation to hear the great news of the GAA allowing the reopening of their pitches. And I hope further down the line that the facilities and everything else, clubhouses, will reopen again, and that the GAA will get us back to some sort of normality, whatever that new normal is. But it would definitely lift the spirit of the nation. The thoughts of a winter championship and an All-Ireland final in the darkening evening of December it would just whet the appetite. And the thoughts of championship matches under lights on Friday or Saturday night. It's magnificent, I suppose, imagery around that, and Croke Park under lights is just it's a special atmosphere, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what's in store. But definitely the GAA does permeate every level of Irish society, and it does have its tentacles in every parish in the country. And that good news has been so positive, especially for the young people, to be allowed back out to meet their friends again and to engage in some sort of physical activity that is not only good for their body but for their mind, and the social experiences that they're gaining back as a result. It's wonderful to see, and I'm so happy that the GAA made the right decisions in a timely manner and in line with government guidelines.
That's right, and will continue to do so. I guess the only people that would be upset would be those poor retailers struggling from 3 months of lockdown, who will now find that that the last Saturday before Christmas is devoted to an All Ireland football final. But that's the way that things go. David Gough, it's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you as always. You wear your many hats with great style and a lot of thought that goes into it as well. So thanks very much for taking the time out this morning, and the best of luck with everything else that the year ahead brings for you.
Thanks, Rob.